Hi, and welcome to Lamplighter Kids Stories. My name is Rebecca, and this is my squirrel friend, Momo.
Hello, kids!
We have an exciting story for you today. In each of our stories, we are going to learn about one virtue. A virtue is anything that is good and right and true. Virtues are like little lights that shine bright and beautiful in a story.
Can I tell them about letters from Momo?
Go ahead.
I want to send you a real letter in the mail once a month. In my letters, I will share some of my fun forest stories and talk more about virtues. Also, each letter includes an activity page. And I may talk a little bit about acorns as well.
If you'd like to get letters from Momo in the mail once a month, just ask your adult to visit lamplighterkids.com. At lamplighterkids.com, you can also find Momo and my Seeds of Character books for sale. So, are you ready? Come and listen while we light the way to your imagination. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second part of Dai Lu's great dragon adventure.
I'm so excited to find out the rest of the story today, and I'm not distracted anymore. I'm not waiting for any invitations today.
I'm glad you don't need to keep your eye on the mailbox this whole story. That seemed like a lot of work last time. By the way, how was Vera's acorn party? I hope you had lots of fun.
Oh, I did! Of course, anytime I have a birthday party for myself, I always make it an acorn theme. But it was really fun to see someone else's acorn theme party. She had some fun games like catch the acorn, roll the acorn, balance the acorn, stuff like that. And after each game, we got to eat the acorn. I went home so stuffed that day.
Well, that sounds like a perfect party for you, Momo. I'm glad you got invited.
Me too. I'm glad Duffy and I made a new friend now, too. There's always room for more squirrels in the forest.
That's very true, Momo. All right, now, why don't we get started with our story today? Last time we left off when Dai Lu and his grandfather were on their way to search the farthest caves, hoping beyond hope that they might find the legendary Queen's Egg. Dai Lu watched his familiar lake grow farther away as he and his grandfather rose high above the mountains. The sunrise looked magnificent from up here. The orange light touched every tippy top of the Kunlun Mountains below. Dai Lu couldn't believe this was happening. He was leaving the only home he'd ever known and flying far away to go on a grand adventure with his grandfather. He looked at the endless forests below and wondered how many more forests they would pass on this journey. Dai Lu felt his mind was full of a million questions. Did grandfather really know where he was going? Did he really have hope that they'd find the Queen's Egg? These and many more questions burned in his mind, but he knew that he needed to save his breath for the long journey. He supposed these questions would be answered in time anyways, one way or another. After 4 long hours of flying over the mountains and forests, all of Dai Lu's pressing questions seemed to disappear. They were replaced by a deep focus. He was tired. He had never flown this long, and if he thought of anything other than pulling his wings up and down, it made him even more tired. He began to wonder how much farther they'd be going today. He was surprised that his old grandfather didn't seem to grow as tired as him. Finally, when he felt his wings could collapse from tiredness, grandfather took a sharp turn downward towards some mountain peaks below. Dai Lu followed close behind, thankful that rest was only a few moments away. They landed near the top of a rocky peak. Dai Lu threw himself on the nearest rock, panting and resting his wings. "Looks like you've never flown that far before," Grandpa said, chuckling. He folded his wings back in place slowly.
Hoo-wee! I'm right there with you. That's the farthest I've flown in years. Why don't we rest here for the night? We'll get started again in the morning. I believe the mountain peaks my great-grandfather spoke of are still a 2-day journey away from here.
The dragons rested. After a quick dinner of fish, which they found in the river below, they curled up together against the blowing mountain air and fell quickly asleep. They knew that they needed to gain strength for the next couple days of flying ahead. The next 2 days passed much like the first. Hours of flying with little rest and food in between. Dai Lu couldn't believe how far away from home he was. How many forests, lakes, rivers, and mountains had they passed? But as they flew around on the third morning, Dai Lu felt more and more excited. They had to be almost there.
Keep your eye on the lakes below,
Grandfather shouted back against the blowing wind.
Find one that's shaped like a crescent moon. That's what we're looking for.
Dai Lu looked at the dotted lakes below. He was looking for a crescent-shaped lake. His grandpa had said that the peaks that rose above it were the ones they wanted to search. Would there actually be caves there? Ancient dragon caves from long ago? He knew that his grandfather had already searched many mountain peaks around the Kunlun Mountains when he was younger, with no success. He hoped the same thing wouldn't happen this time. After another hour of flying, Dai Lu heard his grandfather shout out.
Look, there!
He pointed.
I can't believe my old eyes! A lake shaped exactly like a crescent moon! Ha ha! My great-grandfather's stories weren't all legends.
Dai Lu's heart skipped a beat. Grandfather began to fly down towards the lake in wide, happy circles. The search was really beginning now. They would look all around the lake and up and down these cliffs. Perhaps somewhere around here there was a cave and a lost dragon egg just waiting to be found. Two long days later, after many hours of searching, Dai Lu and his grandfather sat resting high up in one of the surrounding peaks, staring at the crescent-shaped lake below.
Maybe we're in the wrong place, Grandpa,
Dai Lu said, using the tip of his tail to roll some small pebbles down the cliff.
Or maybe everything is just legend after all. Maybe there was no queen, no blue fire of protection, no egg. Now, let's not give up hope just yet. It does seem too good to be true at times, yes, but I don't know why so many of my elders would have spoken of her if she weren't real. We just need to keep searching.
Grandfather yawned and laid down on a large rock next to Dai Lu.
But maybe first a little rest.
With a large exhale, Grandfather was quick asleep. Dai Lu smiled at him. He couldn't believe how much energy this old grandfather of his had, but it seemed all the flying and searching had finally caught up with him. Dai Lu felt a drop of rain fall on his scales. He looked up at the sky. Dark clouds had been coming in all morning, and it seemed they finally decided to open up. One drop turned into many, which turned into a great windstorm. Dai Lu curled up beside the rock his grandfather slept on, wishing that he were in his cozy cave back at home. This adventure had been fun and all, but it seemed that they were nearing the end. No egg, no more hope for the blue fire of protection. As the wind continued to pick up, Dai Lu began to hear a strange noise. It sounded like a deep, low whistle. Dai Lu looked up toward the top of the cliff where the noise was coming from.
Grandpa!
Dai Lu said, shaking his grandfather slightly by the tail. His grandfather didn't move an inch. How could he possibly sleep so hard in this storm? Dai Lu looked toward the top of the mountain again. Curiosity filled him as he heard the howling grow louder with each wind burst. He stood up, shaking the water off his back as best he could, and began slowly making his way upwards. Hopping from boulder to boulder and being very careful not to slip on the wet rocks, he made his way forward. Finally, he neared the top. He looked around an extra large boulder and stopped. There before him stood the biggest cave he'd ever seen in his life. It was as tall as 3 large dragons and so dark and deep that he wondered if it went straight on through to the next mountain range. The wind blew again, and Dai Lu realized where the noise had been coming from. "The wind is whistling through the cave," he said to himself. Sometimes that happened to his own cave back at home, but it never sounded quite as loud and low as this. An extra strong burst of wind pushed Dai Lu back a couple inches, and then another, and another. He held on tight to the rocks beneath his feet, not wanting to fall backwards down the steep cliff. He knew that the winds at the tips of the mountain peaks were often unpredictable and strong. He wanted to go back down and get Grandfather to tell him what he had found. But as the wind kept picking up, he realized the safest thing to do would be to go inside the cave and wait. Hopefully, the winds would die down in a little bit. He jumped out from behind the boulder. With cautious steps, he made his way towards the whistling cave. The minute he entered the cave, he felt safer. The wind was howling outside, but it was quiet and dry in here. Dai Lu's eyes adjusted quickly to the darkness. He saw that the cave did indeed go back a long distance. He wanted to go back, to explore. If this wasn't a queen dragon's cave, he didn't know what else it would have been. It was bigger and grander than any cave he had ever seen. Dai Lu! Dai Lu heard someone shouting his name outside. It was Grandfather. He ran over to the edge of the cave and began calling for his grandpa. In just a few minutes, his grandfather's face appeared from behind the same boulder. When Grandfather saw Dai Lu, his face lit up, and he quickly ran into the cave. "Oh, you did give me a fright! What were you thinking wandering away like that in a storm? But what did you find here?" Grandfather's worries seemed to melt away as he looked up and around at the giant cave. Slowly, a large smile stretched across his face. "Well, I'll be," he whispered. "Grandfather, do you think this is it? The Queen's Cave?" "I'd bet a tasty fish dinner that it is," Grandfather said. "And there's only one way to find out. Let's go exploring." Down towards the back of the cave the two of them went. An odd silence stood between them as they wondered what they would find. They didn't have to wonder for long. Just around the next bend, a huge room loomed before them. Light from a high window cast down into the room, landing magnificently upon the largest dragon nest that Dai Lu and his grandfather had ever seen. After a moment of surprise, the two of them bounded over to the nest and jumped up on its side. "Do you see what I see, or are my old hopeful eyes tricking me?" Grandfather said as he stared into the middle of the nest. "Well, if your old eyes see a sparkling red dragon egg, then you're seeing correctly, because my young eyes see it too. It looks like some kind of egg a queen dragon would lay. It looks like it's never touched a fire, which of course means that it could never have hatched. Must be more than 200 years old by now. But I do believe that dragon eggs never grow old. I would imagine, though I can hardly believe with such hope, I would imagine that this egg could hatch into a new king or queen. A king or queen with the blue fire of protection." The two of them stood in stunned silence for many moments. Then the planning began. They had to get the egg back as quickly and safely as possible. They decided to waste no time. The minute the storm ended, they planned on beginning their journey back home. They would weave a basket together to carry the egg in. Of course, it would take a lot longer to get back home this way, but it didn't matter how slow the journey was. It mattered that they got there safe and sound, with an egg between them. After their plans were complete, they got to work weaving a basket just big enough for an egg. It took a while, but they didn't care. They kept laughing, wondering at this amazing thing they had found. They wondered what all the others would think when they came flying in with a dazzling egg between them. Grandfather couldn't keep his joy in. Oh, I've waited and I've wondered if the stories that I knew were just legends, just all made up, or if they were really true. The hope I had, it kept me strong. I believed that there could be a queen's egg just waiting to be found. Unseen hope, but now I see. Unseen hope, but now I see. Oh, this egg could be our next queen. A few days after Dai Lu and his grandfather arrived back home, everyone gathered around the lake to meet the newest member of their group, the bright red baby dragonette who had hatched out of the egg after a few hours in a fire. The little dragonette looked up brightly at everyone who surrounded her, making happy gurgling noises at them. Dai Lu watched as everyone smiled at this new tiny queen. He could see that she was already surrounded with enough love to fill her to the brim. Dai Lu's father had offered to shelter this new baby queen in their own cave, which Dai Lu was extremely excited about. The next dragon queen, growing up in his very own cave. It all seemed like a wonderful dream. Grandfather looked the happiest of all, of course. For years he had been telling tales of the lost queen, hoping beyond hope that the legends were true. And now before him lay the evidence of his hope. He laughed as the tiny queen began chasing her own tail. While she spun in circles, she opened her mouth and let out a tiny grunt. Everybody gasped. Along with the grunt, spurt forth small sparks of blue fire. The fire fell softly onto the rocks below and seemed to melt into it. They all looked at each other. The blue fire of protection. It was real. Dai Lu caught his grandfather's eye and smiled. They all knew that everything was going to be all right. Several years later, it was not an uncommon sight for the dragons of the Kunlun Mountains to see their young dragon queen flying above them, flashing her red scales and occasionally spitting forth the great bursts of blue fire that fell slowly to the ground. Fear of the humans was gone again, for the dragons knew, Dai Lu among them, that all they needed was to catch some of this blue fire as it fell, and they could be invisible to the human eye for a long time. It was with this knowledge that the dragons lived in peace again, living where they pleased and never fearing the eyes of humans again. Legend says that this queen still guards the mountains to this day. Of course, us humans will never quite know if this is true or not, for how could we see something that's invisible? I suppose then, for us, the dragons of the Kunlun Mountains will remain simply a legend forever.
Dragons might still be out there? Oh, no. I mean, I love stories about dragons, but I'm not sure a little squirrel like me wants to meet a real dragon.
I don't think you have to worry, Momo. It's just a legend after all.
Oh, phew. I am glad that they found the egg, though. That was brave of them to go searching, especially when it was very likely that they wouldn't find anything.
That's right. They were practicing our virtue in this episode. Hope. Hope is when you keep believing that something good will happen, even if it's not happening right away. Dai Lu's grandfather had a lot of hope when he went out to look for an egg that nobody had ever seen. He was trying to believe that something good would happen, even though there was a chance it wouldn't. Hope keeps us going even when things get hard, knowing that there's something to look forward to in the future.
You know what I have hope about?
What?
I feel hopeful that I'll get invited to another acorn party someday. Now that I have 2 close squirrel friends, it's very likely to happen.
I think I agree with you there, Momo. Okay, it's question time. Question 1. What is something you've been hopeful for in the past? Did it happen, or are you still hoping for it today? Question 2. How does it feel when something you are hoping for comes true?
Well, last time when I was hoping for an invitation and I got one, it felt so good. I felt like my heart could fly.
That's a very good way of putting it, Momo. It does feel good to finally have something good happen when we hope for it.
You know what I'm hoping for right now?
Let me guess. An acorn?
What? How did you know? There's no way you would have known that. Can you read minds?
I can't read minds, Momo, but I'm pretty sure I can read little squirrels' minds. At least when it comes to things they want. I think the answer is almost always acorns.
Wow, you're good.
Why don't we go on a little walk in the forest, Momo, and we can go look for some acorns for you?
That sounds amazing. I have hope that we'll find some.
Me too, Momo. Me too. Thanks for listening to Lamplighter Kids Stories today. If you liked our story, please feel free to share it with your loved ones and leave a review. It really helps other listeners find these stories. If you're interested in subscribing to Letters from Momo or would like to purchase Momo's Seeds of Character books, just visit our website at lamplighterkids.com.